There is a city on this earth that three of the world's great religions are willing to go to war over. Not for oil, not for land, not for power. For this city specifically. Why? Why does this one city, built on a small hill, with no natural resources, no strategic port, no particular military advantage, why does this city sit at the center of human history? The ancient Jews had an answer, and it was not political. It was not military. It was something far older than any nation that has ever fought over these stones. And at the end of this video, I am going to show you what those ancient Jews believed would happen to this city before the end of all things. Welcome. Today we are going to walk through one of the most extraordinary stories in all of human history. The story of Jerusalem, not as a political city, not as a news headline, but as the ancient Jews always understood it, as the place where heaven and earth were always meant to meet. If this channel has ever given you something worth thinking about, a teaching, a story, a question that stayed with you, I want to ask you something before we go further. Subscribe, not because of the numbers, but because this community is being built by people who believe that ancient wisdom still has something to say to us. Hit subscribe, and let's begin. The Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, mentions Jerusalem 669 times. No other city comes close. But what is striking is why it is mentioned. Not as a conquest, not as a trophy, but as a choice. Psalm 132, verses 13 and 14 says this: "For the Lord has chosen Zion, he has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it." My resting place forever. That is not the language of a king claiming territory. That is the language of someone who has found the place they intend never to leave. And it begins even before King David. It begins with Abraham. The book of Genesis, chapter 22, tells us that God directed Abraham to a specific mountain to make his most sacred offering. That mountain was called Moriah. The name itself in Hebrew is built from the word meaning chosen by God. This is the same mountain on which King Solomon would later build the first temple. The same mountain that stands in Jerusalem today as the Temple Mount. From the very beginning of Jewish history, this place was not found. It was designated. To understand what ancient Jews believed about Jerusalem, you need to understand what the temple meant to them. Not as a building, as a point of connection. In Jewish theology, the temple was the place where the divine presence, what the Hebrew scriptures call the Shekinah, rested on earth. Not symbolically, literally. The rabbis taught that the Temple Mount was the Even HaShetiyah, the foundation stone, the point from which God began the creation of the world. Think about what that means. The center of creation, the axis of the universe, right here, on this hill, in this city. This is why, to this day, Jewish people around the world face Jerusalem when they pray. This is why, at the end of every Passover Seder, for 2,000 years, Jewish families have said the same four words: "Next year in Jerusalem." Not as a travel plan, as a declaration of faith that the story is not finished. In the year 70 of the Common Era, the Roman army under General Titus destroyed the Second Temple. The fire burned for days. The rabbis later recorded that when the temple fell, something left the world that had never been replaced. All that remained was one retaining wall on the western side of the Temple Mount. The wall you see in Jerusalem today. And for almost 2,000 years, through exile in Babylon, through persecution in Europe, through the horrors of the 20th century, Jewish people carried Jerusalem with them. Not as a memory, as a promise. The Talmud records that even in exile, Jews would leave a small section of their home unpainted or undecorated, as a reminder that their house was not complete until Jerusalem was restored. At Jewish weddings, a glass is broken under the groom's foot, a moment of mourning inside the greatest celebration, so that even in joy, Jerusalem is never forgotten. Now, this is where the ancient teachings become something remarkable, because the Jewish prophets did not just mourn the destruction of Jerusalem, they described in extraordinary detail what they believed would happen to it at the end of days. The prophet Zechariah, writing more than 2,500 years ago, said something that has fascinated scholars for centuries. In chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, he wrote, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all surrounding peoples. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all the nations of the earth are gathered against it. A heavy stone, that all nations will try to move, and none will succeed. Written 25 centuries ago, look at Jerusalem today. Every major power on earth has an opinion about who it belongs to. Every international body debates it. Every peace process eventually comes back to it. Whether you read this as prophecy or as history, the accuracy is striking. And Isaiah, in chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, wrote something even more astonishing. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and all nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, for out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. All nations, flowing to Jerusalem, not to conquer it, to learn from it. So what did ancient Jewish teachers believe would actually happen to Jerusalem at the end of days? I want to be clear about something. What follows are traditional Jewish beliefs, held by generations of scholars and sages. They are not political statements. They are teachings. Maimonides, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers of the medieval period, wrote in his Mishnah Torah that the Messiah, the Mashiach, would first do two things: rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and gather the Jewish people from every corner of the world back to the land of Israel. Maimonides wrote that Jerusalem and the temple would become the focus of divine worship, and from Zion shall go forth Torah, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And the Talmud, in Tractate Sanhedrin, teaches that one of the signs of the approaching Messianic era is the ingathering of the Jewish exiles to their land. In 1948, after nearly 2,000 years of exile, the State of Israel was established. Jewish people from over 70 countries returned to the land their ancestors had been expelled from. The rabbis who had studied these passages for generations had been asking, when? Some of them lived to watch it happen. 3,000 years of history, hundreds of prophecies, one city. What is it about Jerusalem that makes it impossible to ignore? The ancient Jews did not have a complicated answer. God chose it. Not because of its geography, not because of its size, not because of what was already there, but because of what He intended to do there. And whether you stand at the Western Wall as a believer, or you simply stand before it as someone who recognizes that something extraordinary has happened in this place, you feel it. That this is not just a city, that this story is not finished. If this video gave you something, a new way of seeing Jerusalem, a question you want to explore further, then this channel is for you. Every week we go deeper into the wisdom, the history, and the ancient teachings of the Jewish people. Subscribe and become part of a community that believes these old stories still have something to say. And if this video moved you, if there was a moment where you stopped and thought, I never knew that, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps more people find these teachings. Before you go, I want to ask you one question. If you could stand at the Western Wall right now and say one thing, one prayer, one word, one wish, what would it be? Write it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I promise you, your words matter here. And if you want to keep going right now, the video on screen goes even deeper into another ancient Jewish teaching that most people have never encountered. Thank you for being here. Shalom.